these kids that are participating in these games that are being labeled as addicts are not necessarily addicted to anything else than wanting to feel happiness.
Hey guys, it's time for the Games, Geeks Tech Talk. Adesina, aka Desi here, and today we have a very special guest, psychology and data analytics expert in both esports and video games. Please welcome the one and only Narz.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Now, Narz, you're a prominent figure in gaming media. You've written for outlets like Game Tyrant, Hip Hop Gamer, Game Skinny, and more. And since right now there's quite a bit of buzz regarding the World Health Organization introducing gaming disorder as a new diagnosable mental health condition, I thought, who better to weigh in than you? And for those who don't know, gaming disorder is basically being defined by the WHO as a pathological addiction characterized by excessive gaming that's out of the user's control and that's interfering with one's ability to function in normal life. Now, I already know what my opinion is, but Narz, what do you think?
I'm trying to shed light and clarity into what is being said right now because a lot of people tend to misunderstand what exactly a video game quote-unquote addiction is.
So can you clarify exactly why people are misrepresenting this as an addiction?
Okay, so when we think about an addiction, we think about substance addiction, we think about cigarettes, we think about craving a cigarette or craving drugs. They need more of this substance or they need more of that behavior to keep going. And if they don't get their fix or they experience withdrawal, they become irritable and miserable. That definition of addiction does not apply to video games because video games revolve in the realm of positive psychology more so than addiction.
That's really interesting. Can you explain to me what positive psychology is?
Of course. So when we talk about positive psychology, we talk about extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. Extrinsic rewards are things like money, material goods, status, and praise. When we think about intrinsic rewards, we think about the positive emotions, the personal strengths, the social connections that we receive by engaging in these games.
That makes sense. And would you mind, just to really break it down, explaining how games are designed, what the basic components are that we're interacting with when we play them?
Of course. So the 4 components of game designs, every game has to have a goal. Every game has to have a purpose, something for gamers to focus their attention on and continually participate through the game. Normally that's the bad guy or getting top tier gear or armor by the end of the game. It's either rating at the end or it's to be able to literally be the highest level in the game. Whatever it is, by design, there has to be a goal. The second one is rules. There has to be rules in the game. Otherwise, it's not a game anymore. It's just kind of like an environment where you're doing whatever you want. Rules place limitations on players. It makes the game challenging. This fosters strategic thinking and unleashes creativity in games that we don't see in our day-to-day lives in reality. It helps people to explore uncharted areas and to search and find and to think critically about where they're going and what they're doing. The third one is a feedback system. It tells the player how close they are to achieving a goal, how many points they have, score bar, levels. The most basic form of a feedback system is literally achievement unlock. We always see that on our Xbox, achievement unlock. Or when we die, the game is over. This always serves to promise the player that the goal is definitely achievable, but it also provides motivation to the player to keep playing. One of the best games and probably the most heartbreaking games to play of all time that absolutely provides this sort of feedback is Dark Souls. Dark Souls is one of the hardest games to play, but when we are playing the game, we are constantly getting feedback about our progress. And what's so important is that when we die and we get that you're dead, it fuels us to get back in there and to prove this game is wrong, that no matter how difficult this game is, it will not overcome you. And the last part of game design is voluntary participation. You can't put a gun to someone's head and say, you must play this game, because that defies the laws of game mechanics. Obviously, rules and goals and feedback are critical, but voluntary participation is probably the most important aspect because it establishes a common ground for any player to play in. When we think about the freedom to enter and leave a game, it takes away the stress from participating in something. But it also offers this experience where we're getting challenging, hard, fun work at a safe and pleasurable environment.
Got it. So these four components of game design, would you say that they have a strong relationship with positive psychology?
It really depends on the designer. If the game designer is creating intrinsic rewards utilizing the feedback system, rules, and goals, they can stimulate positive emotions, personal strength, and social connections within the game. Some RPG games don't have social connections. Other games provide that social component. So we see like Call of Duty and Halo and League of Legends offer that social component where we start intensively engaging with the world around us, within the game and outside of the game. You see a lot of the times people who have never had friends from other parts of the country, other parts of the world are now opening their boundaries to build positive, engaging relationships with people from all over the world.
So, do you think that these positive psychological effects and social connections are what might be leading some people to overuse games?
Absolutely. And I think it's more so that we crave satisfying work. We want to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We crave experience with at least the hope of success. And we crave meaning and social connections. And sometimes we don't get that in our day-to-day lives. We don't get that in reality. We go to work, we go to school, we eat, we sleep, and then we go to bed. Where's the meaning in that? And so games offer that on a large, epic scale where we're being part of raids, we're being part of digital wars, where we have meaning. It makes a difference when we're level 99 with the top tier gear. It makes a difference when our guild is the number one guild on the server and our character is the best at PvP. Those give us meaning, and the social connections that we experience build bonds that we would have never been able to experience in the real world.
Now, what's interesting to me is the contrast between the way that games, from what you're saying, can potentially fill normal human psychosocial needs and the more simplistic way that addictive substances, for example, seem to just plug into chemical receptors in the brain and I would think can't really provide any long-term psychological benefit the way that video games can. Do you think that that's one of the reasons why excessive gaming shouldn't really be classified as an addiction?
That is exactly why. What I really think is that gaming is going back to the roots of humanity. We used to be nomads where we had to live by intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. We would not have survived if we didn't have these emotional benefits from hard work and winning and having the payoff from the hunt of finding meat and food for the day. And now that our lives are more sedentary and we're now experiencing peace and we don't have to necessarily hunt for our food, we go to the supermarket to get it. As humans, we still crave those challenging day-to-day, hard, fun work. And because we're not getting it, it really begs the question, what are we doing in our society that is not allowing us to fulfill our inner human nature?
Absolutely. That is the question. Now, let's turn it around and think about the other side of things. Because while I personally don't feel that video game addiction is a widespread issue, obviously there are groups who disagree and they feel that this is a huge, huge problem. So, what would you say to those people in particular who agree with the WHO's designation of this new gaming addiction diagnosis?
I think we have to be a little bit open-minded. Coming to the conclusion of labeling video game as an addiction, it's jumping the gun way before we understand and conceptualize what has video game done for us so far. You're completely forgetting about how video games have helped veterans with PTSD, has helped people be able to learn new languages and learn to understand their environment. A perfect example is a company called Muzzy Lane. They're creating video games that are not necessarily for entertainment, but they're actually for educational purposes. And so by labeling it an addiction, you are discrediting all the research and all the effort that a lot of scientists and psychologists are investing to do good using video games. So I would say before stating that it's an addiction, take the time and play a game. And if you can't play Halo or Call of Duty, that's fine. But play some of Muzzy Lane's games. There's a game there where you can learn how to budget. You can learn a new language. You can learn how to get yourself into politics. The list goes on. Jane McGonigal even has a game called Super Better. She was subjected to a terrible concussion, and through her own game, she found the will to live. So there's so much good that can come out of video games that by having this label solidified in people's hearts and minds, we are destroying opportunities for actual, meaningful, wholehearted good to happen.
Well, Narz, you're definitely speaking my language. So going forward, for those who, let's say, do overuse video games, do you have any advice to help them cope in that situation?
Absolutely. And it all starts at home. If you have an adolescent under the age of 18, it is your responsibility as a parent to ensure that you are allocating time for your child to play a game, but within the right framework. Ensure that you aren't just allowing your child to spend hours and hours on a game. I think the reasonable amount of time for an adolescent to play a game is 7 hours. Any more than that, it's a little bit far-fetched. And I say that because that's where you get the complications where children become too hell-bent on this hero that they love so much. We think about addiction. We spend hours a day on social networks, on Facebook, on websites. And we think about TV. We spend hours watching TV. But at some point, you as a parent say, that's it, no more TV, time for bed. And so we have to really think about what kind of structure we are providing and creating for our adolescent. And if you're a young adult who's older than 18, but you still struggle with this, find the strength within your community, within your social support system, to be able to have fun outside of gaming. There are many, many, many communities where they meet outside of gaming for coffee. Now we're seeing a robust boom of cons where people are now going to conventions to transfer their social connections and social relationships within a digital environment and bringing them into the real world. And I think that we need to start thinking about those types of alternative ways to get ourselves out of this mentality of addiction and start creating a very positive life for gaming.
Well, I really love the fact that you brought up television, because I know so many people who think it's perfectly acceptable to binge watch Netflix for an entire weekend. And that's socially acceptable. That's quote unquote normal. So 7 hours is absolutely reasonable, especially on a weekend. I certainly think it's better for someone to be playing a video game for 7 hours than watching Game of Thrones for 7 hours. For many reasons. No shade to Game of Thrones. But I really want to talk about also, before we go, talking about positive psychology, what can we do as a society to improve the lives of young people so that they can get the kinds of things that they're getting from gaming in other ways?
We need to start providing clear and concise and articulate how some of these kids can reach their goals. It goes back to the education system. We need to find better ways to make extrinsic and intrinsic rewards a part of our education. Yes, getting an A is great, but having the camaraderie, the positive emotions, the personal strength, the satisfying work experiences, that's really where you're going to find meaning. There are a lot of schools that are adapting gaming mechanisms into their educational process, and they're seeing that there's a lot of improvement. You see a lot of kids being a part of their studies and working hard to get A's because they're on a leaderboard with their entire school and they're trying to beat the other class. Like if we think about applying game design and game mechanics to our reality, we will see that what we have lacked in reality, game mechanics can be able to supplement. And when we think about that, it's hard to conceptualize that because it's like, you want me to play a game in real life? And it's like, yeah, I do. I want you to look at life as a game, as something meaningful, as something bigger than yourself, that you will be motivated to go through challenging work in a safe and pleasurable environment to succeed and achieve your goals.
Wow. So it's almost like instead of seeing our attraction to games as a problem, we can actually look at it as an inspiration and opportunity. We can let games inform us as to what's missing from modern life so we can retool it and make it better.
Correct.
That's amazing. Narz, I love this conversation, and I don't want to go before we find out a little bit more about you. Can you tell me what projects you're working on currently?
So one of the companies I'm a part of is called QT. They combine intelligent discussions, research, and analytics to be able to talk about topics in the industry. One topic that I'm pioneering right now is video game addiction. So I implore anyone that's listening to this, please drop in your opinions, your comments, be a part of the polls. We need as much data as possible to support that video games is actually a benefit and can actually do good in this world. If we as a community do not band together to make our voices heard, we will not be able to see growth in our community, in our industry. So I do implore you, take the time, click the link, and participate. Be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Awesome. That is such a great initiative. Guys, please participate. Make your voices heard. I'm going to put the link both on screen and in the description. And Narz, how can we find out more about you personally? Do you have a website, social media?
Yes, please. If you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Narz on Twitter and Instagram. My website is narz.co. Besides talking about video game psychology, I also talk about data and analytics with QT, as well as the science behind skincare products.
Narz, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I am so excited about everything that you've shared. You've really added some insight to this topic that was missing, and I hope people take the time to click the links and read more about you and everything that you're doing with QT. And guys, for you at home, thank you so much for listening to the Games Geeks Tech Talk. For more exciting and thought-provoking interviews and stories in the worlds of tech and gaming, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Games Geeks Tech. Click that bell so you never miss a video, and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on gaming disorder, how we can incorporate game design to create more positive lives, or anything else for that matter regarding video games that you'd like to add to this conversation. Until then, I'm Desi Sanchez with GGT, and I'll chat with you next time. So, if we shouldn't be talking about this issue as an addiction, then what should we be talking about, and how can we address this issue?
We really need to be talking about happiness. These kids that are participating in these games that are being labeled as addicts are not necessarily addicted to anything else than wanting to feel happiness. They're striving for satisfying work, for experience, and for meaning. And we need to be able to provide that for them in the environment that they're in.